Christianity is on the decline in Europe and something else is starting to take its place. Muslims will soon outnumber practicing Christians in Europe.
The name exalted over and over in Islam is Jesus.
I was told that Jesus is the Messiah who will come back at the end of time to establish the kingdom of justice and peace.
Not Muhammad?
Not Muhammad, the Christ, son of Mary. You cannot be a Muslim if you don't believe Jesus is the Messiah. It's in the Quran.
Amina, Muslim Council of Britain, you converted from Christianity to Islam. Why do you believe Islam is right?
I can ask any question of Islam and it will give me a logical and scientifically proven answer.
Before Islam, I was raised in quite an atheist family. My parents don't really have a religion. And as I started to get through the Quran, I kept reading passages like the truth comes to them and they know it, and they still deny it. And they're the ignorant and they're the ones going to hell. And I was like, what if that's me? What if I'm reading the truth and then I'm just going to turn away from it? And every time I read a passage like that, I would get really scared. And then about halfway through Ramadan, I said to myself, if I die tonight and I'm not Muslim, I'm going to hell. So I prayed Isha and I Googled how to say your Shahada in English, and then I took my Shahada by myself.
Lindsay Wheeler used to have no interest in religion and called herself the ultimate non-believer. But after reading one book about Islam, she turned her life around. Now she's a Muslim.
What caught me in Quran, it was a point when I reached the creation of a baby from this small dot till how it structured the body of the baby and what comes first, bones and flesh and all this. And because I was very much interested into genetics and things, so when I saw it and I knew that it was the book was written nearly 1,005 years ago, so I said it cannot be anything but truth.
Despite all that, it's estimated that last year around 5,000 people converted to Islam in the UK. Over half were white, and 3/4 of them were women.
The Trinity was very confusing to me. I didn't understand how God was a man or how man could become a God.
I just felt that the minute I put my head down to the ground, I felt like I was really talking to God.
Ruiz was born in Puerto Rico and raised a Catholic. But he says in 2002, after the birth of his twins, he began searching for a new spiritual path. The following year, he converted to Islam.
What attracted me the most was the simplicity of its theology. Islam is very simple.
And as a Catholic, how do you view Muhammad?
As a very wise man, I see the beauty of Islam in a very strong way. A simple approach to God, a simple approach to prayer and devotion. I'm very touched by 5 times a day praying. I'm very touched by the Ramadan, by the fasting, the beautiful presence of God and the power of God. And as a Catholic, I need to learn from that.
It's a very inclusive religion, more inclusive than Judaism or Christianity. Judaism has its chosen people, the circumcised. Christianity has its chosen people, the baptized. The chosen people of the Quran are all monotheists, any of them. From Adam on, there's an unceasing stream of prophets, beginning with Adam, coming down through Isaiah, Abraham, Moses, Jesus, John the Baptist, Mary, the mother of Jesus.
The Quran speaks about the God of Abraham, the God basically of the Bible, as the only true God. Then the Quranic God and the biblical God is the same God. In the Quran, of course, God is referred to as Allah, and that in Arabic is the name of God, and that name of God is used also by Arabic-speaking Christians and Jews. And in fact, in Arabic translations of the Bible, we find the word Allah also used. The Quran is very clear that Muslims should say to our Christian and Jewish friends, Ilahuna wa ilahukum wahid. Our God and your God is one. And the Quran, for example, in Surah 2, verse 163 says, وَإِلَهُكُمْ ilahun wahid la ilaha illa huwa ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And your God is one God. There is no God but Him, the Beneficent, the Merciful One. So throughout the Quran is saying there's only one God, and identifies that as the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. For example, in Surah 2 again, the Quran says were you present when when death came to Jacob, when he said to his sons, what are you going to worship after me? And they say, Na'budu ilahakum wa ilaha abaikum Ibrahim wa Ismail ilahan wahida. We are going to worship your God and the God of your father Abraham and Isaac. It is only one God. So this is the God that the Quran is inviting us always and impelling us to worship. It is the God of the Bible.
Well, with us is the former MTV presenter Christiana Bakker, who converted to Islam. Christiana, first of all, you had this glamorous job and a lifestyle that would have been envied by many, many people. What was wrong with it? What was lacking?
In one word, God. I didn't know, and I had a coworker give me a Quran to read. I found a lot of peace in it. It's like this is what was right. There were no contradictions in it. There were no issues with it. It was what was right, and that's the only thing I can come up with. Is it just felt right. I dress better. I feel better. I'm not as anxious anymore. Well, I'm anxious today, but it's different. It's a different anxiety. I eat better. I don't feel angry. I don't feel lonely anymore. I feel like I have a connection with my purpose in life.
Islam and Christianity and Judaism, they're from the same roots. And I was like, oh, really now? I didn't know, but supposedly what they were telling me is that, well, now I know that it's the truth, is that these three religions come from the Abrahamic faiths. That's what they're called. They have the same roots from Abraham. Until I realized for myself that since a Muslim is someone who just submits themselves to the will of Allah, to God, I feel like I was Muslim my whole life.
I read this book, and it's called A Brief Illustrated Guide to Understanding Islam, and my little brother actually read this book last August, and he accepted Islam as well too, alhamdulillah. So I read this book, and I read about the scientific miracles of the Quran, and this started it all. Like, I've read a million other sources as well, but this was the book that started it all for me.
Still, for converts like Roy Bradshaw, who grew up in a conservative Christian household, this deeply personal decision has provided the peace of mind that eluded him for a lifetime.
I think in my heart I've always been a Muslim. I think my fitra inside my heart, that the things that drive me were Islamic from the beginning.
Got questions about Islam? Well, one hotline may have your answers. The toll-free number 877-WHY-ISLAM is plastered on billboards across the country, created by the Islamic Circle of North America.
Hi, I'm Femi OK, and you're in the stream. Today, why do prison inmates in the United States convert to Islam?
Have converted to Islam behind bars.
First, if I could get a show of hands, how many of you all converted to Islam inside prison? So almost all of you.
I believe that we find Islam in here because you have nothing but time and books. And once you study the truth.
Then I found the stories of Noah. I found the stories of Lot. I found the stories of David. I found the story of Solomon. I found the story of Zechariah, of John the Baptist, of Jesus. And guess what? These people were the best of mankind in this book. They were the best of us. They taught the talk and walked the walk. And the entire book is telling me to do two things. Number one, worship God alone. Number two, obey God alone. The same God that I found in the Old Testament, the same God that Jesus spoke about, I'm now finding in the Quran.
Muslims believe that Jesus was a prophet. They believe he was born of a virgin. They believe he lived a sinless life, that he performed miracles, and that he's coming again.
Muslims are the world's fastest growing major religious group. By 2050, it estimates there will be 2.7 billion Muslims worldwide, making up 29.7% of the global population.
Under these projections, worldwide, the proportion of Muslims will surpass Christians around the year 2070.
Islam is one of the fastest growing religions in America.
Around the world, Islam is the fastest growing faith.
Islam is one of the fastest growing religions.
The report also highlights that in that same amount of time, the number of Muslims in the world are expected to match the number of Christians and become the world's largest religion by the end of the century.
Islam is growing in popularity in many of Colombia's urban centres, and this mosque is no exception. There's a mixture of both Arab and Colombian worshippers.
It is a growing community. I think if you look at the mosques in the capital city, for instance, you'll see more than half of the people are native Colombians who became Muslim.
Maria Isabel became a Muslim 5 years ago.
Women wearing traditional Islamic veils can be seen walking through the picturesque streets of Old Havana. But increasingly, these women aren't tourists from far-flung places. They are Cuban Muslims, and their numbers are growing by the day. Most are converts to the religion and say they've embraced the faith for a range of reasons: spiritual revelation, religious curiosity, or because they're in a relationship with a Muslim partner.
Stephen Byers, a fourth-year science student, has been learning a lot lately. But his latest studies aren't limited to just physics and biology. Byers is learning about Islam, a religion he's recently embraced.
Like a brief illustrated guide to understanding Islam.
About 5 years ago, Byers couldn't have pinpointed what belief system he followed.
And this belief brings me power, and anything I ask from Allah, by time, Allah give it to me, and I'm very thankful. And inshallah, all people to feel these feelings.
Lucy Silver is a Muslim, but she wasn't born one.
I was Catholic.
Lucy switched faith, converting to Islam.
Well, those words about Islam, about the Quran being the final testament, the final words of God to humankind, really affected me. I didn't hesitate to accept Islam after I read the Quran.
Islam is a religion that preaches peace.
Muslims are peaceful and tolerant people, and
when we think of Islam, we think of a faith that brings comfort to 1 billion people around the world. Islam is peace.
We know Islam is a religion of peace. The Quran says, "O mankind, we created you from a single pair of a male and a female, and made you into nations and tribes that ye may know each other." It says, "Let there be no compulsion in religion."
In Russia, there are over 23 million Muslims. That's 1 out of 5 Russians.
За последние 20 лет количество исламских культурных и культовых учреждений в России выросло в разы. Удивительные, просто удивительные по своей красоте мечети появились в Татарстане, Башкортостане, Чечне, в других регионах Российской Федерации. Сегодня традиционный ислам – это неотъемлемая часть духовной жизни нашей страны. Его гуманистические ценности, как и ценности других наших традиционных религий, учат людей милосердию, справедливости, заботе о близких. Все мы это очень высоко ценим.
Credo che non è giusto identificare l'Islam con la violenza. Questo non è giusto. E non è vero.
Ma qualcuno può domandarsi, ma perché il Papa va dai musulmani e non solamente dai cattolici? Ma quello che Dio vuole è la fratellanza fra noi. E in modo speciale per questo viaggio con i nostri fratelli, figli di Abramo, come noi, i musulmani.
Service, compassion, and generosity. Muslim Canadians show us the best of those values all year round, whether it's supporting a local charity or being there for neighbours in need.
One of sacrifice, about doing your duty and doing what's right. And that is something we see daily from Muslims right across the UK. Men and women who, in all kinds of different ways, make such a huge contribution to modern British life. In business, in our public services, culture, the media, at the highest levels of government, and of course, in England's World Cup winning cricket team, British Muslims are helping to make this country the success it is today.
I believe in harmony with the message of Holy Quran that mankind were one community, then they differed among themselves. Its original from the Holy Prophet and the fundamental values of Islam, which literally means peace. So, let us remember the teaching of Holy Quran that if anyone slew one innocent person, it would be as if they slew a whole people. If anyone saved one life, it would be as if saved a whole people.
The Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, said, none of you has faith until you love for your neighbor what you love for yourself. This is what it means to be a Muslim. Among the very names of God we hear the compassionate, the all-merciful.
People have been drawn to Islam's message of peace. And the very word itself, Islam, comes from salam, peace. The standard greeting is, Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you. Islam is rooted in a commitment to compassion and mercy and justice and charity. Whoever wants to enter paradise, the Prophet Muhammad taught, let him treat people the way he would love to be treated. The first word revealed in the Quran, Ikra, means read, to seek knowledge, to question assumptions.